other place where they weren't. So that was
We
quite
have not, for some strange reason, we have not been live.
Uh-oh.
Oh, shit. Pardon me.
Oh, dear.
It started and then it stopped.
If it's recording, we can always post it after the fact.
Yeah.
It will still.
Hope we didn't make too many enemies there today.
No, actually, I don't think I don't think it was recording.
It keeps blinking on and off for me, like it's in the corner. Live and then not live.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
There we go. Now it's
all right. I think we are now actually live. It's not clear to me that we have been live at all.
For anyone who may not have seen us, do you want to take 10 seconds and summarize what we think of the multiverse?
Actually, I think, to be perfectly honest, I think that our whole thing just started 17 minutes late.
Okay. Can you see whether anyone?
Hi, folks. That is really bizarre, because I hit the button over here that said go, and it popped up and it said, okay, we're there. And somebody actually just chimed in, nope, we were not live. We're live now. Oh, how about that? I guess people can write things on YouTube and we can read them.
Hey, Jeff, let me ask you this.
Thanks, TX Gunner and Andrew Wells.
You want to quickly reshare it on social media then, now that we actually are live?
Yeah, sure, why not, if you want to go do that. And we got a good laugh, and TX Gunner says start over.
Okay, well, I'll tell you.
In the multiverse, in some other universe, this went live when it was supposed to. That's the summary.
We are clearly exploring all of the different technical ways that this thing cannot work. It's all right. We're learning. That's why you need a director somewhere to be sitting there. Okay, but all right. So back to where we started.
So who are you?
So how many universes are there, Dave?
Well, who are you to begin with?
Who am I?
Yeah.
I'm Jeff Hester. Last time I checked, I wonder sometimes.
And who are you with the patriotic background?
I'm Allison Klussman, work for Astronomy Magazine.
And I'm Dave Eicher, also from Astronomy Magazine. And Jeff and Allison and I are going to tell, we had a technical glitch and are a little late here, but we're starting again now. And we're going to be talking today a little bit about whether all that is all that there is. The first thing we thought we would talk about is that we live in a big universe. We have a very small part of it here, and we're undergoing a somewhat of an unusual and a problematic period on our little planet here. But we live in a universe that has maybe 100 billion galaxies at present time in the universe. Had more earlier before they combined so much. And lots of stars, of course, are within them. And it's a universe that maybe stretches across at least 93 billion light years diameter. However, that's the visible universe. And the visible universe that we see may not be anywhere near all our universe. And even more interestingly, over the past half generation, we've determined through mathematics and cosmology and astronomers arguing about things that maybe there is a multiverse. Maybe there are multiple universes that exist.
Okay, I am going to start with the question.
One of them.
I'm going to start with the question of why the heck would anybody assume that what we could directly see was all that existed anyway? Well, why is that the starting assumption?
That's gotten us into trouble before, has it not?
Yeah. I mean, kind of the history of our understanding of where we are in the universe is, oh, just my little island exists. And, oh no, just, you go to the edge and you fall off. Or, oh no, it's just the Earth and the Earth is at the center. But no, the stars that we can see are the entirety. And now we're sitting here imagining that we're in the middle of this universe that's, 90 some odd billion light years across. and that's the part from which we can receive light. And somebody's going to say, but wait a minute, the universe is 14 billion years old. How in the world can it be? And we'll talk about that some other time. And so the history of our understanding of things has been to understand that what we directly experience is not all. And there are all sorts of reasons to imagine that there are things beyond our universe, or beyond the universe that we can observe.
But there is an edge to Earth, because I saw a bunch of accountants sailing a ship in a Monty Python movie. And they came off
Well, accountants shouldn't be sailing ships. That's your first problem.
Yeah,
what
indeed.
do you think of this great big multiverse concept?
Well,
Allison?
How about talk about flat earthers in the midst of that question? Since there are people out there who really do
about them
think
without getting angry. No, I think Earth is not flat, and I think we have proven that to the best of our ability to prove that. And if you don't believe it, you really have some problems. But
yeah,
there are other things that we have also proven to beyond our ability to prove them, and there are people that don't believe them. So it's
apparently the flat Earth people have never flown on an airplane, for one thing. But what do you think of this?
Oh no, they have whole notions of how these flight paths are really flying around.
It's all the is it epicycles? Yeah. Was that the explanation for making everything go around Earth, even when it didn't? So
I do think that there is tremendous irony in folk like flat earthers and all of the anti-sciencers finding each other on the internet to share these notions. I mean, I really kind of think that if you don't believe in things like the Earth being round, then you should not get to use technologies that rely upon
Earth being round. No GPS
being round. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, not to interrupt the flow here, but just for 1 second, we used to, back especially when lots of snail mail came into the magazine, we used to get a deluge continuously of crazy mail. And a lot of them were sort of my theory of how the universe works, or they were, here's my patent explanation for this miraculous new thing with, copyright stamped everywhere and things typed in capital letters on every page. And we responded nicely to many of those people early on, but then of course you just make friends with those people and you have lots of friends who send you this kind of stuff. So the true way we solved this by connecting them with each other. And that energy went somewhere.
Really solving the problem is my question.
That's
sometimes the internet makes bigger problems than it solves.
Yeah, introducing Hitler, Mussolini, Hitler. Enjoy.
We had one fellow who for 5 years, I'm not making this up, others can verify that, who sent us every week. He sent us an ornately drawn plan, original plan sketch of either an airplane or a ship that was the astronomy staff airplane or ship with deck plans and all this stuff, and I thought if you could bottle this energy and put it into some other use, it would, do more than these wind turbines, I think, But anyway, the multiverse. Do we believe that not only could multiverses exist, but more recently and more interestingly, maybe there is a way that we could infer the existence of a multiverse, even being stuck in our old ordinary universe? What do you think about that?
I think it's really interesting, honestly. And I mean, like I said before we were live, I think, now I have to remember how I put it, but it's really a question of, is our universe the way it is, without a multiverse there to shape it? Or is it the way it is because there's a multiverse out there shaping it? And those are difficult questions to ask, but they are questions that are worth asking. And I think that's really what's kind of started bringing the multiverse theory kind of back into interest, is this idea that there are things in our universe that we observe, like there's more matter than antimatter. Why is that? There is no reason that should be. We don't know. And if you say, well, maybe it's this influence of some outside multiverse, suddenly things do start to make a little more sense. That may not be the only explanation, but it is an explanation. It's a reasonable one until we can prove that it's not, which is how science works.
Well, and if you go and talk to people like the folk like Alan Guth, for example, is the guy who came up with cosmic inflation in the first
One of
place.
the best classes I ever took.
Really? I would imagine so. Alan is a great
His
guy.
classes were a lot of fun.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I'm now jealous. I would have liked to have taken a class from
I made my
Alan.
sister, who was visiting me in college, come and sit in on one class, even though she had no idea what it was about. I was like, you just have to come and sit in this class with me. So she has taken one class.
Just because it's fun.
Right.
But you know, you listen to the kind of stuff that he talks about, and it's like, no, you don't understand that given what we know of the early evolution of our universe and inflation and all of that kind of stuff, it doesn't make sense that there was only one of them. You know, what things in physics happen just once? That's not the way it works. And if you look at in the quantum world, we have the sense of, well, something has to cause it. And so what was the cause of it, and so on and so forth. But in the quantum world, that's not the way that it works out. Rather, the way things work is, okay, this is going to get god awful for a minute. Apologies to people out there. Anything that does not violate conservation laws, physical conservation laws, will happen with some probability in the quantum realm. And it turns out that universes coming into existence does not violate any conservation laws. And so the idea of our universe being a one-off just doesn't make any sense. And then there are other ways to, the quantum multiverse, or the quantum many worlds, as it's often called. The idea that our quantum reality is splitting off into many different possibilities, and they're all equally real. You go and talk to people like David Deutsch, who's the sort of the father of quantum information theory and quantum computing and all of that kind of stuff. And he says that in the calling the many worlds interpretation an interpretation of quantum mechanics is like calling dinosaurs an interpretation of the fossil record. You know, he looks at it and says the only way that any of this stuff makes any sense is if all of those other realities are equally real. The whole problem, I mean, we could talk about quantum mechanics at length. The problem with quantum mechanics, ever since there was such a thing as quantum mechanics, is how do you get this beautiful theory that works extraordinarily well to somehow collapse and make only one universe? And it is the most accurate theory we have. It does things like predict the muon magnetic moment out to 14 decimal places or something god awful like that. And yet nobody knows how to have it make a single universe instead of many universes. If you just stop trying to impose single universe on it, it suddenly makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
So what about this little planet that we have and the incredible, strange circumstance that we're in now? What are we going to do about this COVID thing? And now you can, if you want to, you can go in certain places and get an essential tattoo or a haircut or a massage. What's going to happen here? And what? Let me ask you this: what don't we know yet? Maybe the most important question at the moment about this virus.
Most things, I think, is the answer. I mean, we're still not even sure, again, how much immunity is conferred with having it. I mean, again, there is no reason to believe that having it does not make you immune, at least for some period of time, because that would contradict the way that we know viruses work, including coronaviruses. But we don't know. And we don't know if, I mean, just focusing on the antibody test, which has kind of come into, center stage pretty recently, is also, we don't know if having a mild case makes you immune if you develop enough antibodies to actually confer immunity on that or not. I think we do know exactly how quickly it's going to spread when we start opening things up again. We've seen that already. So that is one of the things we do know. We don't know whether states will actually get that. Whether I think whether we're going to end up in some kind of cyclical, lockdown and then let people out and then lock down and let people out. That seems to be the way that we're heading if they're just going to open things up again. But
yeah, there's other stuff we don't even know really have any good idea of how it kills or how many it kills. There's been some very recent workout looking, okay, we're not just going to look at the people who make it to the hospital and are tested and you say, okay, you've got COVID, which is the numbers that people see. But people have started looking at things like the overall death rates, or specifically the rates of death from various sorts of cardiac events or strokes. There have been, and it turns out that if you look at the excess deaths, where you just say, what would you expect in the way of deaths, and then how many people have died? Those excesses are substantially greater than the number of people that to date we have said, all right, this is a COVID related death. Some of that is because people aren't just going to the hospital, but some of that seems like it's probably COVID killing in ways that we're not altogether on top of as yet. That includes young people dying of massive strokes. There's some really fascinating work where a number of young people dying of, forget the term for it, but the kind of stroke that you get if there's something that blocks a major artery.
Ischemic stroke, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But young people dying of these things, and there was one doctor that said that it was just bizarre because there was nothing else in the history of this person that said that stroke should be a thing to worry about, and yet this person had this massive stroke.
And it was people in their 30s and 40s, which is, you expect to see these strokes in like 70 and 80-year-olds.
Exactly. And so we don't really know how it kills. We don't know how many people have had it, except the evidence suggests that maybe it's probably less than 5%. We don't know how it confers immunity. We don't know, as I said, how it kills. We do know that the models are wrong. If you go, there's been a lot of talk about the models out of the University of Washington, the Institute for Health Metrics. I forget the name, the IHME, anyway, that have been showing, it's going to go up and it's going to go down. It's going to go up and it's going to go. But if you actually look at those models over time, it's going to go up and go down. Well, okay, it's going to go up and then it's going to go, it's going to go up and then it's going to go down. And if you look at what's going on with known new cases, the known new cases are not falling in the way that the models predict. In fact, the very last numbers showed them starting to turn up a little bit. So you get a bunch of people talking about, it's going to be over and it's time to open up and that kind of stuff. And it's like, I know that you can still see the fins out there, but we're pretty sure the sharks are gone. Everybody, it's time. It's okay to jump back in the ocean. It's craziness. Dave.
So where does this go over the summer here, over the coming days? I think there was an announcement of the vice president today saying that he thought that the pandemic would be over by Memorial
Day, right?
And I think that we had a company meeting today in which there wasn't anything that was concretely said you wouldn't expect so. Our lockdown and stay-at-home order in Wisconsin extends through May 26th, but clearly there was an inference of this is going to be going on for a while, sounded like quite a long while. And they seem to be cognizant of the fact that if people go right back into the office, even if you can separate people logically in an office environment, you're going to have serious problems. So they seem to be taking a logical and cautious look at this, which was good to see. But then again, Georgia and Texas and lots of other places are apparently opening for business. So we're going to have a live real-time experiment going on here in some parts of this country to see what happens.
Yeah. I kind of hate to say it, and I probably shouldn't say it live, but I will. Arizona's order is set to expire in the next few days, I think, and I don't know that any decision has been made as to what to do.
And what's the nature, Jeff, of Arizona's order? It's not an absolute staying at home order. Is it?
Oh no, it's not. It's closing non-essential industries, where I'm trying to figure out what counts as non-essential.
But it's not terribly strict in Arizona.
But it's not. It is not terribly strict at all. And no, our numbers are not going down. It's none of that kind of stuff. But at least people are behaving differently. Even if the order is not there, people are behaving differently, which matters. It doesn't matter enough, but it at least keeps it from climbing that quickly. But to be perfectly honest, I sort of hope that the experiments that are going to show what happens if you really try to open things up get done elsewhere. I'll just be perfectly honest. I grew up in Oklahoma, and it's not that lots of people in Oklahoma that I love, but if you're going to sacrifice somebody, I might rather it be them than me. Wow. especially since it's the idiot anti-vaxxer that they elected to the governorship that's going to make that call for him.
If there are any children watching now, you might want to sign off, kids. Okay.
Again, gallows humor. Come on. How else do you deal with something like this?
I thought the part where we were talking about the multiverse was dark.
I don't know, the multiverse is pretty positive. There are some universes out there where this is not happening.
Yeah.
Where people don't have to listen to us.
I hope so. Where people don't have to listen to, where there's no need for us to be here. Yes. Maybe there's even some fraction of the universe, of the multiverse out there, where we are the ones who have billions upon billions of dollars and are convincing other people to go out and be cannon fodder in the name of reestablishing our profits. But it's craziness. It is absolute craziness.
Well, there's a lot that we don't know, and there's one thing that's very clear. To really know a lot more, there are going to have to be one hell of a lot of tests administered.
Yep.
So how do we get to the point where, and why are we not getting faster to the point in this country where we're testing a lot of people?
Okay, let me ask you the following, and I am being perfectly serious in the question that I'm going to ask. Imagine that you were the one who was nominally responsible for the response to this thing.
Ooh,
and you had bungled it as badly as it has been bungled. Would you be going out there and saying, hey, there are all sorts of indications that maybe this thing is a lot worse than we think it is, so let's have lots of tests? Good testing is the last thing that they want, for crying out loud.
So this is there's a self-fulfilling prophecy loop already in process.
Yeah. Which is why, again, the models that they cite are the models that are the very most, it really kind of amazes me, because you hear out of the, while you're not shooting up Clorox and stuffing ultraviolet lights and various orifices and things like that, if you actually look, there are people other than the bunch out of University of Washington who are doing epidemiological models of this, and none of them paint as rosy a picture as the crew out of the University of Washington. And yet those are the models that we keep seeing put in front of us. Those are the models that tell us what we're supposed to expect. Those are the models that say, oh gee, we should be opening up now. So there's an awful lot of cherry picking going on in that regard. We're going to show you the data that we like. We're going to go on Fox News and try to convince you that even that's overstating the problem somehow. By having somebody who's a scientist aboard, we're going to try to persuade you that this now has credibility. I don't know. We need to find something else to laugh about. This doesn't get us there.
How do you see the next few weeks playing out, Allison?
I think it depends on where you live. I think it's really going to depend on where you live. I mean, places like Wisconsin and Illinois, which still have the stay-at-home order, I mean, I think it's going to be, this is now business as usual, and I think that's at least going to continue. I'm a little worried that places like Georgia that have opened up are just going to see again, for a week or two, things will probably seem fine. You're not going to see a lot more cases, and then in about 2, 3, 4 weeks, you know, it may take 4 weeks, but I feel like, you know, within a month in those kinds of places, you're going to start seeing a lot more cases again if you're testing for them, I guess is the
Yeah, but hang on a second. This is a killer tattoo. That's the other part of it to consider.
literally.
Get your COVID tattoo here. Oh man. Ouch.
I mean, I think in another sense, I mean, if you want to spin this as positive, you're going to start finding out exactly how much of the population you can infect without having them show symptoms, or, you know, without them, you know, needing to go to the ICU. In a way, you're getting more data. Whether that's the way you want to get more data or not is.
Now, wait a minute. So what you're saying is that maybe this is the fastest way to get to herd immunity, and we just find out who the really weak people are.
Fastest and most life-saving, I guess.
You know, I have an issue with that, because of course medical ethicists, if you came in and said, all right, why don't we just take a bunch of people and expose them and then watch what happens? Medical ethicists would say that is absolutely not acceptable. We do not do that in medical research, so on and so forth. So, okay, that's fine. So instead, why don't we just expose a few 100 million people and see what happens to them? It's yeah. Of course, in the medical, in the lab situation, you would be doing testing and you would be watching what happens carefully. In the real world situation, we're not doing the testing. We're not doing, you know, we're not watching what happens carefully. We're not even, you know, the federal government is not even collecting data on the number of deaths in extended care facilities and places like that, where this stuff is really rampant.
And the outcomes happen, and they just happen. And if someone gets really sick and recovers, or they die or whatever, that's just, you know, it goes unrecorded, and time moves on.
So Dave, what do you see if you step back and look at all of this stuff? Let's do prognostications, or scenarios at least. What are scenarios going forward?
I agree with Allison that this is going to play out to be a really different experience depending on where you are. And the places that are more suburban, that are more rural, especially those that are to some degree, to a large degree in the American South, that are more anxious to open up and are more rattled psychologically about the economy and the economic aspects in a shorter term, are going to have rebounds where a lot of people become ill, and they're going to have to reconsider, you know, was this a mistake, and blah, 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 blah. But the sort of New York City experience of a lot of people getting really sick is going to happen partly through happenstance and random occurrences here and there in smaller communities all over the place. And it's going to be, you know, again, we went through this principle politically in 1861 through 1865. You know, this business that the states can run everything better and more efficiently and on their own, state rights, didn't work out too well, okay, for the Confederate States of America. You know, and there's a reason for the federal government trying to manage things in the best way, in a cohesive overall manner, uniformly, because it's a hell of a lot more efficient and sensible to do it that way. But now we're going to apparently have a state by state or region by region experiment going on, in which some places become really troubled and with a lot of people who are going to get sick, and others don't so much. And this is going to go on and on and on and on for weeks and probably some months to come.
Yeah, but if you fold that over into actual, okay, what's the whole thing going to look like? Like, you're talking about the rural areas where we're starting to see outbreaks. The thing about rural areas is there are large swaths of the United States where it takes you a substantial fraction of an hour to get to a hospital or some kind of facility like that at all. And once you get there, they don't have ICU beds. They don't have the care that you need to.
They don't have the New York Sloan Kettering, they don't anywhere near the state-of-the-art facilities. Yes.
Yeah. And as you start seeing outbreaks in areas like that, of course, a lot of those outbreaks are going to go undercounted because people are going to die at home.
Right.
We just had 47 people in our town of 300 die of strokes, but we're sure that doesn't have anything to do with COVID, right?
Right.
But if you look at it, we're counting on, or a lot of people are counting on this notion that somehow, all right, the peak is past and now things are getting better and we can start going back to what it was. And isn't it going to be wonderful to get back to normal? The reality is we know that if you do that transmission is going to go back up again. And as transmission goes back up again, cases are going to go back up again. Medical facilities are going to be overwhelmed, so on and so forth. What happens when that happens? How do we respond at that point?
It's so difficult to say, given that we're in a rather extraordinary and unpredictable time politically here, before a crisis like this even has occurred. But you'd like to think in a modern world that the government would help and protect its citizens. What we're going to see is essentially a lot of individual IQ tests taking place as well. Whether you're responsible or not responsible, do things safely or risk things and maybe become infected.
Although, Dave, you're attributing that to IQ tests. There are other problems. For example,
I would say that if you're risky with this thing, it would demonstrate a lack of intelligence.
Okay, I have a daughter, 2 kids, her husband. Yeah. She fortunately has a job where she can work inside, work from home, and has been. But Amin has to go back to a public-facing job later in this week as soon as the Arizona order is lifted. And they've looked at it, and for them to keep food on the table, they require that income.
Well, that's true. And
they're just, they're horrified because it's like, what do they do if the choice is between going and facing infection, subjecting your whole family to that, or not being able to put food on the table?
Well, that's a very difficult choice. And I was thinking more of the people I just saw a couple of hours ago in a grocery store who go into public places with no protection, that's what I was thinking about. But that is a dilemma. Here we have 26 million people in the last 5 weeks who applied for unemployment. We have in terms of pure numbers, an historic unemployment force in the United States. We're not quite to anything like a Great Depression, but it is going to be a desperate situation for a lot of people. It's a real dilemma, survival and income versus the risk and health. It's a real problem, and there's no easy answer for that for a lot of people.
I think it comes down to almost privilege. It becomes a matter of privilege as to whether you can stay home or not, and that's problematic. I think, it goes back to a lot of what we were talking about in the first couple episodes of, this is what should happen. What should happen is people don't need to worry about their life versus putting food on the table. But I think nothing has changed in the past couple weeks that indicates that's not going to be the case.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sure it has. The oil industry has pretty well convinced the administration to give them a huge bailout. Doesn't that fix it?
Nothing for the people that actually have the problem.
Nothing for the people that actually, but the people who actually have the problem just don't make big contributions to the right politicians. Let's face it.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, again, I've been on about this before on here, but you step back and look at it and it's like, okay, given our production capability, that we can keep everybody alive and housed and all of that in having not bad lifestyle, actually, apart from the fact that you can't go out and run around, without having to have people go out and face that kind of risk. Some fraction of people have to go out and have public facing jobs, put real money into being sure that those people are properly protected. If it turns out that having had this thing conveys immunity, then you don't say, oh, well, gee, you've had it, which means that now you can go out and run around and have a job and eat. Rather, you say, okay, you have had it, which means now you are a resource and we're going to utilize you in ways that now don't endanger others and yourself. But it takes someone who is willing to sit back and actually think hard about these things and say, we do need central coordination, and we do need to realize that perfect free market economy is not the answer to all possible questions, and that this is one of those. And so I read an article in the Irish, I forget exactly, but it was an editorial in an Irish paper that basically said that over the last couple of 100 years, people have looked at the United States and they have seen hope, they have seen anger, there are many ways that people have responded to the United States. This is the first time that the rest of the world has looked at the United States and felt pity. And it is pity for our complete inability to actually respond to this thing in a sensible way. And the core of that inability to respond to this thing in a sensible way is people who are adamant that ideology and wealth mean more than humanity. So yeah, I mean, in a sense, this thing is a reductio ad absurdum on what it is that we have become. But again, back to scenarios going forward. Where might we be in August? Come August, what are the possibilities?
I think it's going to be a scary thing in certain areas and on certain differing scales, because you mentioned supplying to the essential worker, to people at hospitals, to people running the systems that keep cities going, the necessary people. We can't even in well-supplied, well-moneyed medical institutions provide enough protective equipment now. What about those hospitals that are spread out in the hinterland that have even less money and less resources? I mean, we can't protect the people who are essential workers. And I think that's going to continue and get even worse as these pockets of infection sprout up here and there over the coming weeks and months.
So how does the nation respond to that? We've seen these protesters out largely being pushed there by folk with money. It's really kind of disturbing that big donors who are sitting back in their very safe places are convincing others to go out and protest on behalf of their profits. But on the other hand, we've started to see some counter protests. I think it's really great, the protesters in several places. I know certainly DC, that big long line of cars with their lights on, honking their horns, driving by the Trump Hotel in DC and stopping and dumping body bags in front of the hotel. How do people respond when they realize that this whole "it's all going to be better" line of horse manure that they're being fed just isn't true?
I think it depends on whether you centralize the response or leave it up to the states still. I think it's really going to depend, because
I'm not asking about states, and I'm talking about people.
I think it's going to test your ability to ignore reality. It's gonna, I mean, the people like us that believe this is real and that this is a serious threat are going to continue being careful, because that's all we can do. You know, I guess the way I look at it is, you know, we do what we can with the resources that we have. And, you know, again, if you know, Wisconsin opened tomorrow, I still wouldn't go to the store as often as I did. You know, I have that privilege, but that is what I would do, is I would continue acting like I'm under quarantine, even though I'm not. I think you're going to have people doing that. On the other hand, you're going to have the people that don't believe in this or don't believe it's as big of a threat. And I think it's going to be a test of how long they can believe that. And that may be a very long time, or it may not be.
Okay, what about the people like we were talking about before that do understand it, that do recognize that going in and doing this thing that they're being forced to do so that they can have food on the table is putting their lives and the lives of their loved ones at risk? And I'm thinking now about, you know, the number of people who have someone who is immunocompromised, or, you know, someone who is older, or, you know, conditions like COPD in the home, where, all right, if you bring it home to them, you're not talking about percentage 1% type numbers. You're talking about fatality rates that are much higher than that.
Mm-hmm.
So you say to a person like that, you have to go out and you have to face that kind of outcome, because we as a nation cannot get our act together to respond as a nation. At what point do you just say, screw this, we're going to go storm the Bastille?
You're going to test that as well, I guess. I don't know. How are you going to get there?
I was already there. There's nothing there but an obelisk now.
No, I mean, I think it's still going to be a very interesting experiment. It's going to be an experiment of how messed up are we, and can we dig ourselves out of this hole?
So how does one prepare right now to get ready for the various possibilities?
I think kind of doing what you're doing already, you know, making sure that you are stocked up on enough food so that you don't have to go to the store every week. If you can, I mean, or for me, you know, if I can order something online as opposed to picking it up in the store, I'm going to order it and have it delivered. You know, I realize that's still putting other people at risk. And so I feel honestly bad about that too. It's the question of, is there more risk in me going to the store, or is there more risk in getting something delivered for other people? You know, not even necessarily to myself. Or like, you know, why I went to the grocery store and I didn't get pickup, because I know there are people that are immunocompromised that probably need that pickup slot a lot more than I do.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's going to be a matter of, again, what steps can you take as an individual? And, you know, that's all you can do. You just have to take those steps and prepare as best you can, and continue being diligent, again, about washing your hands, about wearing a mask when you go out in public, even if it's not the popular thing to do anymore. Because I have a feeling, I mean, I admit this went through my head a couple times. You know, the first time I went out, I was like, what if I'm the only one wearing a mask? Is that going to be weird? Like, how will I feel? And the answer is no, I'm the one being safe. I shouldn't feel bad for doing this. Mm-hmm. And I think it's, you know, again, don't feel bad for doing things that make you and other people safe, even if it becomes not the popular thing to do.
Well, but I am still, you know, I'm a big Mel Brooks fan. You know the movie, you must know the movie Young Frankenstein. Mm-hmm. Delightful movie. Brilliant. The scene where, you know, a riot is, I forget the exact words, but a riot is a terrible thing, and it's about time we had one. You know, how far can, you know, if telling people they can't get a haircut can bring the wacko crowd out and protest about their rights being violated, at what point does being forced to put yourself in life or death kinds of situations for you and your loved ones so that you can sell soap. You know, at what point does that become something that people just say, no, this is not acceptable? And say, if all right, if I'm going to be out there anyway, instead of going to work, I'm just going to put on my mask and go down and, you know, whatever it is that you might do down at the State House. Have we gotten to the point that we are such sheep that break never comes? What's the future look like in that regard?
I think unfortunately we're going to go through risk. This thing is not going to be under control completely for a long time to come. There are going to be people who have to work economically out there for their own survival and their own circumstance, and who are also going to be minimally, we hope, exposing people near them, maybe in their family, who are in high risk situations. And so they're going to have to be a lot of individual decisions made about how to carry on the best people can while minimizing the risk. And unfortunately, there are going to be countless situations in the coming weeks and months here in which we're playing at this little level or that little level, some Russian roulette. I don't see any other way around it now.
And again, I think in a way that comes back to what those of us can do. Again, if you don't need to expose others to yourself, don't do that. And I mean, again, I can't change the fact that someone might need to go to work to put food on the table, but I can lower their risk by being smart. And that's, again, that is what I can do right now. And so I think those are the things that we need to make sure that we're being responsible about.
Okay, but for the people who don't actually need to go, let's even set aside we ought to be able to find a way to distribute wealth a bit differently through a pandemic thing. Let's just set that aside. All right, there are people who are going to need to go to work. The people who just decide, I want to be out there, la da 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 da, wave my flag and, wear my MAGA hat or whatever, are adding to the spread of the disease. They're not just risking themselves. They are putting at risk the people who are in those kinds of situations. How is it that we tolerate that?
It's going to not be illegal. So it's going to come down to what are people willing to take? And I don't know.
So that's the best that what we once considered to be this great nation can put together in a real response.
So I don't know. I mean, again, we've seen, marches for science and things and protests for good taking place. I don't see why that won't happen. It's just I don't know
have a march
when
for
or
science
how.
now.
But of course, the people that are smart are going to know not to get together and march for anything because that's a bad idea. So it's kind of counterproductive in a way.
I'm afraid for the next few months, at least, yes, we are stuck in this circumstance,
going to have to protest
realistically that we're going to have, Jeff, for a few months at least.
Yeah,
if we're going to protest, it's going to have to look different.
But for a few months at least, yeah.
Also, we're at about 45 minutes.
Okay, yeah, we are. We are. Yeah, I just wonder. I mean, I think that it is clear that we are at a time when none of our assumptions about what can and cannot happen in the United States apply anymore.
No, and I think it can be a very good thing or it can be a very bad thing.
And it could be a very good thing. Or,
we're at
a
precipice where, again, we can say, is this enough to make us change or is it not?
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that. Maybe will be. It would be nice if it is.
We can fly or we can die on the rocks below, and we'll find out which we choose as a people to do. Yeah.
Well,
on that positive note.
On that positive note.
We have a couple of more days until the next episode to solve everything.
Right. Indeed. Yeah. Indeed. So we will see people on Thursday.
I think should work.
Excellent.
Fantastic. All right. Take care, guys.
Stay safe.
Stay safe indeed. Stay safe indeed. And